Hello, welcome to day 3 of our somatic yoga practice. Please continue to chat with each other. I'm looking at the chat. I love knowing you're all out there trying to say hello to everybody. Some cold spots again, Minnesota. Desma, good to see you. I've got a number of my somatic yoga teacher training students on here with us, and if anybody's looking for classes, know that I do have on our website, Embody with MM, a directory of teachers who have completed our course. So you're welcome to search classes out in your area. We're spreading the Soma love. So, hey Leah, hi Jane, hello Susan. Yes, and Patty too. All right, Tracy, Doug, and Patty. Okay. So today we're moving into the torso, though we did that a little bit yesterday. If you were with me with the arch and curl, we did the full body arch and curl, but we're really going to focus on the torso. And the torso is a really super special area when it comes to working with somatics. If you are a person who has a leg length discrepancy, meaning one leg is shorter than the other, and that was not present at birth, if you can notice that sometimes the head will always be leaning slightly one way, or one shoulder's higher or lower than the other. You might have a hip that's higher or lower than the other. We sometimes refer to that as trauma reflex in somatics. It's a Thomas Hanna term. And all it means, it doesn't mean you're holding trauma in your body, but it means that we have one side of the body that's shorter and tighter, and the other side is looser and maybe on vacation. It can mix a little bit. This is also great to go into the torso if you have scoliosis. So I work a lot in my torso because I was a trauma reflex person. Right side still shorter than the left, but I started all of this with my right leg almost a full inch shorter than my left. And, everybody told me you're going to need to put a lift in your shoe and all these other ideas. And when my teacher, Maria Mendola, explained to me that the problem is not in your leg, it is in your torso. Your torso is shorter on one side, which holds your leg up. That made perfect sense to me, and I knew my work was cut out for me. So please know that if you're a person that has something like this, it's something that you can work with. And maybe start just by taking a moment, place your hands on your heart. And trauma reflex can be there because of one particular incident or accident. It can also be there from years of using our body the same way, which maybe is not the best way. So for me, always keeping babies on my right hip and backpacks on my right shoulder, crashing on my right shoulder when I was skiing. So all these things can happen, and it's also emotional as well. It can, of course, be emotional. So with your hands on your heart, just recognize that your body, if it could speak, could tell lots of stories, right? And when we do somatics, we want to honor those stories without getting stuck in them. So one of the best things I tell myself, and it's a quote from Brew Joy, is make no comparisons, make no judgments, and delete the need to understand. That's usually the hardest one. So recognize the stories that your body holds, but also invite them to leave. Is it something you still need? So that's just a thought today, and I'll come back and look more at the comments, but I'd like to get started with you. So if you were with me yesterday, we did a movement for the pelvis, and you can do this standing with me if you want. We did a movement for the pelvis where we noted that the pelvis in walking goes through what we call a torsion or a rotation. One hip comes forward while the other is back. So then the other one would come forward. So this is a movement that sometimes will lead from the feet, but we talked about moving from the pelvis. So now we're going to take another movement that happens when we walk. So I call these the planes of the pelvis. But this one in particular takes us much more into the side body, so into the torso. So if you go ahead and lift a leg and over exaggerate it a little bit, like you're going to take a step, notice how, lift up your left leg, notice how the left hip lifts and the waist shortens. And then you put your foot down and then lift your right leg, right waist shortens. So almost like you're doing like a Frankenstein walk. Lift your foot up and just feel right above your pelvis, or even think of, I call them the girdles, the pelvic girdle and the shoulder girdle. And notice the space when it gets shorter and when one side gets longer as you do that. So we're going to simulate this movement. You don't even have to move, right? You could just lift a leg up. We're going to simulate this movement, but realize how much happens in the sides of the body too, in what we sometimes lovingly call our waist, but I like the torso. So let's come down onto the ground and get started. I invite you to keep a blanket by you or a full-size pillow, because we are going to be doing some side-lying movements today, which you may want something underneath your head. And of course, right now, as you get ready to rest, if you do find that your head is way back where your throat is more open and your neck is too curved, then just slip a little blanket or something underneath your head. You can choose to either keep your knees bent with feet on the ground in a constructive rest, or take your legs long. Just recognize that if when you take your legs long, there's any pulling or significant arching in your low back, you may be better off keeping the legs bent or putting something underneath your knees. We'll just be here for about a minute to do our land and locate. So maybe even consider placing your hands on your pelvis. Pelvis is truly the center of the universe. Look down from your pelvis all the way through the legs and to the toes. Just noticing whatever you can notice. From the pelvis to the toes on the right foot, the pelvis to the toes on the left foot. Is there a weightedness of your legs? Are they easily dropping? Does one feel longer or shorter now? Or does your weight rest differently in the left buttocks and the right buttocks? Just noticing what's below the pelvis. And land on everything touching the ground, the backs of the heels or your feet if your feet are on the ground, thighs, buttocks. Let the ground support you. And then we'll enter our torso first with the mind's eye. Just feel your torso. You might place one hand, your right hand on your belly, your left hand somewhere in the center of your heart. And invite yourself to breathe into your torso. So that gentle knock on the door. We don't go barging in. We just want to be a polite guest in the center of our torso. And the way to politely enter is just to feel your natural breath. Just breath observation. You don't even need to change it. What in your torso is moving with your breath? And can you get a sense of expansiveness, levity, lightness, and filling as you're breathing in? What expands out? What expands up? And can you feel that sense of gravity, release, that bit of soft compression coming back in as you breathe out? So just breathing, our respiration is a beautiful way to begin to connect with and improve our relationship with our muscles in our torso. So many of these can be used as muscles of respiration. But for you, just noticing, does the belly move? Do the ribs move, front and back? Does the chest move? Can you feel your breath all the way up under your collarbones, into your throat? Or is there any stickiness, agitation, any areas where it's more difficult for the breath to enter? Just note that. And we'll be starting with the left side. So if your legs are extended, please take your feet, and we'll actually be leaving the right leg long, but I'm going to leave a bolster underneath it. And just the left leg is going to bend with the foot on the ground. So I like to imagine that you've got a belt loop right on the, if you can feel what we call your ASIS, your bony hip bone right in the front of the left hip. Find that and imagine you've got that belt loop right on that hip. And what we're going to do is you're going to take a breath in and imagine pulling that belt loop slightly towards the front of your mat. In other words, you're going to slide the left hip away from the armpit. And then as you breathe out, take that left hip, imagine grabbing that belt loop and pulling it towards your armpit. And that's it. And if you don't want to do it to your breath, you don't have to. But you're inhaling, letting the hip in the armpit so you'll feel length through your side body. And then as you exhale, like you're sliding the hip. So I'm not lifting up like yesterday. I'm keeping my buttocks on the ground. I'm sliding it. On exhale, shortening the waist. Inhale, slide it away. And exhale, slide it towards you. So what we're doing is we're creating a little bit of a side bend or a lateral bend. You don't have to overdo it. So if you're feeling sticky or it's just not moving yet, use your foot first. So one of the things we learned is we can create force by pushing into gravity. So maybe as you're lengthening, you sort of push your foot, your knee and your shin forward, that left foot. And then as you're shortening, push into the ground or draw the thigh towards you. So use your leg a little bit, but then see if you can let your leg be more relaxed and make this movement from the waist. So from your pelvis, you could even add your armpit. So if I'm adding my armpit, I might even reach my left arm overhead as the hip goes forward and then squeeze it. So I like to add a little bit more onto the squeeze here. So as you inhale and reach, so we're still, remember that this is torso though, so it's not just the leg and the arm. So I'm starting with my torso, but I might also take what we call that internal rotation of the hip. It's going to create more space through the left side body. So tipping onto the big toe side of the left leg, reaching the left arm overhead. And then on the exhalation, tip onto the pinky toe side. There's your external rotation. And you might even slide the elbow and the knee towards one another. So if I'm doing it in its full motion, I'm going to inhale, still moving from the waist, from the hip. The two girdles go away from one another. I tip onto the big toe side of my foot, reach through my arm. As I exhale, it's like you're squeezing a sponge out on that left side. You can squeeze your thigh towards your elbow, elbow towards the thigh. Feel that shortening and compression in the left side. So I usually like to do these a few times first, one breath per movement, but you don't have to. In fact, in the true somatic lineage, we do what's called pandiculation, which pandiculation is this idea that we take muscles that might be stuck in a particular position and we first engage them. So pushing into the foot, pushing the hip forward, and then we lengthen them. And you might come into that space of length and take a few breaths. See if you can direct your breath into your left lung. So we hold it for a few breaths, feeling the length through that whole left side. If there's any discomfort in your shoulder, you can do this with your hand on your shoulder. Just reach through the armpit. And then slowly take a few breaths. I like to think of releasing 25% at a time. So take like 3 or 4 breaths and slowly let that go completely. Can you completely let it go? Then we can do the same thing with the other movement. So now I'm going to exhale and squeeze. And you'll notice that left side short. You'll no longer be able to breathe into the left lung if you were able to do that before. Maybe you need to breathe into your right lung. So squeeze that left side. And then very voluntarily, so you're staying present, slowly release it all. Let's do the slow-mo one more time, and then we'll do a few more movement. So as you inhale, coming onto the big toe side of the foot, left hips reaching forward, left hands reaching overhead. Think of creating space between the hip and the armpit. Breathe into the left lung, because there it is. So I like to think that movements or postures in any yoga, but particularly somatics, it's just about creating space for your respiration. They're placeholders for your breath. So breathe into that left lung. Got all that room too. And then slowly take a few exhalations each time. Come out of it a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And let's do one more of the squeezy. Sometimes I call this big and small too. So we're big, now we're small. So you can exhale and squeeze and feel that, so you can feel the way your spine is curling, right? You've got the left side of the spine is compressed, the right side is more spacious. Short waist on the left, long on the right, but right is relaxed. And then slow release there. Okay, so we're going to be switching positions. We're going to do everything with the left, stop and check in, and then do the right. I'm going to turn towards you, so we're going to be on our right side first with the left side up high. I'm going to take a blanket, and you can do the same. So the key here with the blanket is we're going to be rolling our head. So when you put your blanket underneath your head, make sure there's like a couple inches behind your head so that when you roll your head, it doesn't fall off the blanket. But you could use a pillow too. So putting that down and coming on to, well, I've got a microphone, I have to move out of the way. Whoops. Coming onto your right side. You can bring that right arm slightly forward, so instead of resting on the outer arm, which sometimes doesn't feel so good, you can rest on the shoulder blade. So let's start just by doing what I call stir the hip. Place your left hand on your hip. And we've done the away and towards us. So start with that. Notice we're just on our side body now, right? But it's the same thing. We can push away with the hip, lengthen the hip. We can pull it towards us. But we can also go forward and back. And sometimes the forward and back, in order to do that to begin with, you might have to slide your legs together. So if that left leg is sitting on top of the right, but then see if you can leave your leg relaxed and just slide the hip. And then if you had a handle on your left hip and you were stirring it, give it a nice little stir. Notice how your side body's responding to that, right? When does it stretch? When does the front side stretch? When does the back side stretch? You can go circle in both ways if you want. And again, if you're feeling stuck, you can slide the top leg on the bottom leg to make the same motion. You can use your leg, initiate from the leg, but then see, can you feel all that motion, and can you let the leg be quiet and move from your hip? And then feel the response from the side of your body. And you can feel the response by placing your left hand on your left side, but you can also use the ground for feedback. Notice when your right waist lifts off the ground, it's shortening, right? And then when it pushes into the ground. So let's add on to this and bring it into our breath if that's good for you. So now as I inhale, I'm going to breathe into my left lung, and I'm going to lift the left ribs up. So it's like a buoyancy. It's floating up. And as I breathe out, I'm just going to let it land, maybe slightly pushing the right side into the ground, or think of squeezing the left shoulder towards the left hip. So shortening. But let's do it with just the torso first. Inhale, lift up. Feel that little lateral side bend. Exhale, squeeze. So I'm still just using the torso. But I can think of initiating from the hip. I could initiate from my shoulder. I can initiate from the rib cage. Think of your ribs like an accordion. They're opening up, playing beautiful music, and then you're squeezing them to make more sound. Now, if we want to add a little bit more because this is about attaching your legs to your torso and also your arm, we can add on the inhalation. You might reach your arm overhead and reach your leg long. So just watch, though, that you're still moving from the torso. It's not just an arm and leg motion. Lift up, breathe into that left lung. And as you exhale, there's a couple different ways to go about it, but I like to squeeze my armpit towards my hip. The leg can stay long and you can plug the thigh bone in, or maybe you want to bend it and squeeze it in. It's really up to you. But we're big on the inhale. That left side body is long and spacious, and small on the exhale. I'm leaving my head down for now. I'm going to let my neck relax, and I'm going to do a couple in motion, and you might want to try that too. If you get too tired, just stop and let it completely relax. Even though you're moving from the left, notice the response from the right waist. Do one or two more in motion. Just find that flow, that freedom of creating length and spaciousness, and then compressing and shortening. All right, and then let's do it as more of a pandiculation. So next time you inhale, reach. Again, if there's any pulling in the shoulder, you can just keep your hand on your shoulder, or even keep your hand at your side. It's a torso movement. But take that left waist long, that left side of the torso. Breathe into your left lung. So the position can stay still, but I'm active, pushing through the heel, reaching through the hand. And the breath is going to continue to create space on the inhalation. The position is just a container for that beautiful left lung, our little lung. One less lobe there because we have our heart there. Breathing in, and then slowly, a couple breaths at a time, let it go. Just let everything fall wherever it falls. And then we'll do the same thing on the exhalation. We'll squeeze. So you might do the squeeze with the leg in here, or just plugging the hip in. I tend to find I feel more through my waist if I keep the leg long, but this brings more stretch into the backside, so whatever you want. There is also an option to lift your head. If you're lifting your head, make sure your skull is back, not forward, so you're feeling the muscles. We're getting to our SCM muscles on the side of the neck. So we're short through the left waist as well as the neck. If it's uncomfortable, leave your head down. Squeeze it. Shorten it. Got to breathe somewhere other than your left lung. And then slowly release it. I'll do that side one more time. Inhale into a big, so a pandiculation is a yawn. So think of taking a big full yawn through that left side. You might even yawn. Let's see if I can make a yawn. And then what do we do? On the exhalation, take a few exhalations, slowly and completely release back to your state of grace. And then take an exhalation and squeeze. Tighten or shorten. Think of the left hip and shoulder are trying to kiss each other. Head can stay down or come up. And slowly release that. Getting a little butt burn here. Anybody else? All right, so we're going to switch the position with the movement just a little bit. So this is that same, the idea that when we lift a leg up, the hip comes up and then it comes down. We're going to change the positioning, the movement just a little bit. So now we'll go into more of an extension of the hip. So slide your left leg. If it's not long, take your left leg long. slide it behind you, and then slide the arm overhead. So you're going in opposite directions. Left leg is going to the back behind you, and arm is coming in front of you where you can see it. So that's your inhalation. And then I call this one the somatic twist. As you breathe out, you're going to let your arm slide in, left arm. Just let it rest on your ribs and slowly let the left shoulder roll towards the ground behind you. You'll notice I also brought my left leg forward. So here is what we sometimes call in yoga a twist or a rotation of the spine. But more importantly, look at it for a moment from a standpoint of your torso is rotating because whatever direction the pelvis is going, the shoulder's going in the opposite direction. And same thing here. Shoulder and pelvis, opposite direction as you reach. And shoulder and pelvis, opposite direction as you rotate. If you're doing it to your breath, I like to inhale and lengthen and exhale and fall into the rotation. Enjoy the movement. So we want to be able to let the pelvis and the shoulder go in the same direction sometimes, but they also need their independence. They can go in opposite directions. We say that the waist here is what we call a psychological sphincter. It's this idea that, and it's, you can even think of your diaphragm, that the diaphragm divides the abdominal cavity and the chest cavity, right? Your thoracic cavity. And it has a big job because it's keeping everything from below from going up to where the heart is. And not just physically, but emotionally. This is our great protector. But enjoy the movement. You can let your head roll. Always invite you to stop and be still in any of these positions that feel good for you. Last one. And then we're going to roll ourselves slowly onto our backside again. And whatever position you started with, whether your knees are bent and feet on the floor or your legs were long, I'm going to go ahead and put my bolsters underneath my knees again. And I'm going to be quiet, and I just want you to take some time inside of yourself to feel, not just the legs, but all the way up through your torso. Notice your breathing, the availability of the left lung and the right lung. So taking this time to stop and pause and notice your creation. This is really important because it's giving your brain an opportunity to relearn, to remap. What does the left leg feel like? What does the torso on the left side feel like? What does the right side feel like? And say thank you to your beautiful left side. And we'll switch sides. So the left leg can stay long now. Tell it it's on holiday. And you might take the right leg, bend the knee, place the foot on the floor. So this is that, what I call a hip lift. So the buttocks is staying on the ground. As you breathe in, you can push the right hip away from you. So think of that belt loop. You can put your hand right in the front of the bone, use those bony landmarks, and you're pushing it away from you as you breathe in and drawing it towards you as you breathe out. So if it feels hard to move from the pelvis at first, use your leg. You might push your shin forward and your kneecap, and then draw your thigh towards you. We just want to get the torso to respond to the movement in the pelvis. Grab that belt loop. Push it away from you and pull it towards you. And always sensing if one side was a little bit stickier or sassier than the other. Just noticing. And then make no comparisons. Make no judgments. And delete the need to understand. You already found it. That's all the work there is finding it. I'll do a few more there. And then if you want to add on, so I like to add a little more with the leg and the arm. So as I inhale and push that hip away, still moving from the hip though, I'm going to tip onto the big toe side of the right foot and draw my right thigh bone forward into internal rotation. I'm also going to slide my right arm overhead. Blanket's in the way, so a lot more spaciousness through through the right side. And then on the exhalation, I'll fall onto the pinky toe side of the right leg and squeeze. Oh, this side's tight. Squeeze the elbow and the knee towards one another. So inhalation, reaching. There's the levity. Exhalation. It's not just gravity landing, you're active, you're squeezing. Move the blanket out of the way. And see how your right side responds. Can you remember what your left side told you? Because that's how your body speaks to you, is in sensation. What is the right side saying? And sometimes it's helpful, it's beneficial to spend more time doing a movement on one side than the other. It's not like a yoga practice where everything needs to be balanced. Sometimes one side is tighter and it needs more lengthening. You can stop. So let's take this into another inhalation, do that pandiculation, so lengthen through your right side. And here's that spaciousness to breathe into your right lung. Feel all the way from the right hip to the armpit. See if you have a sense of movement in the ribs, those beautiful intercostal muscles that are sliding between the ribs, in and out. There's a lot of juiciness. I call this the juicy center. And then slowly, slowly release that. We'll go the opposite way. You can exhale and squeeze and take a few breaths there. Shorten, like your right armpit's trying to kiss your right hip, elbow and knee. And slowly release that. Little at a time, all the way. And we'll do one more like a pandiculation, reaching through the right side. Breathing into your right lung. What's accessible? A little release at a time. And then another squeeze. Shorten the right side. And let that go. Okay, so I'm going to turn so you can see me, and I'm going to ask you to please come on to your left side. If you used a pillow or a blanket underneath your head, you can bring that with you again. The truth is, I wish you were all in this room with me right now. I want to say that because it's true. Come down, rest on your left side. It already did its work. It did a lovely job, and now it's your right side. So we started with just thinking of your right hip and push it away from you. So lengthening and draw it towards you. Same thing we did when we were on our backside. And I remind you that because it's important. A lot of times we're doing the same movements. It's just that our body position has changed relative to gravity. So we get different feedback. So now you can feel the left waist lifting off the ground. Go that back and forth, up and down. And then the one we did yesterday, which was more of the rotation, you can push your right hip forward and pull it back. And sometimes it's a little sticky, like mine. So if it's not going easily, think of sliding your right thigh on top of your left thigh. Move it that way first. And then try to let the leg be heavy and relaxed and move from your hip. And if you get the up and down and the back and forth, you can start to make it saucy and stir it. Stir your right hip really slow. And we're going to go even slower through the sticky parts, or where it tries to skip out. Your head and neck relaxed. You can switch the direction of the circles. So it's like we're moving our hip, right? But feel the response of your torso. And then we can add on to that. So we're going to go into the inhalation. You might place your right hand on your ribs. Inhale, lift the right ribs up. Exhale, let them drop or even slightly squeeze the hip and the shoulder towards one another. So you're creating a side bend. Inhale, lift up. Exhale. So you can see how the breath can be such a healing tool for us to get into the torso, because we physically use the breath as well as pranically, energetically. So here we have this lovely liver, right? What happens if you move from your liver? Lift your liver up. And if you want to add an arm and a leg, really lift your liver up. And then give your liver a little squeeze on your exhalation. So we can go into moving from the organs. And does that feel different than moving from, say, your hip bone and your shoulder bones, right? Your girdles, your girdle bones, or moving from the lung itself? I think you're giving your liver a little detox. Stretch it out. And give it a little sponge bath. Squeeze it. Remember, you can also be doing it this way, squeezing your leg in. Really let the breath help you facilitate this movement. And do a few movement and then see if you want to stop and take. So you're hugging the muscles to the bones, but they're long. The muscles are engaged but long. Not so far that you can't still breathe, particularly into your right side. And then a slow, complete release, just to wherever your body wants to be naturally held by the ground. And then we can do the exhalation, same thing, either think of plugging your thigh bone into your hip and keep the leg long. I even draw the top of the foot towards my shin, or you might bend your knee and do it here. Option is there to add your head. If you want to add those muscles in the side of the neck, watch your head's not forward though, take the base of the skull back. You should be able to draw a line from the base of the skull to your sacrum. Squeeze it. And let it go. And we'll do another pandiculation one. Take a full stretch. Lift those right ribs up. Let them smile. Talk to your liver. Thank you, liver. And a slow, complete release. Last one of the squeezies on the right side. So you can bring the leg in or plug it. Shorten that right side. And then you got to rearrange your breath. It's going to be hard to breathe into your right lung. I thought it was so interesting when I found out you can really learn to control your breath to where you can breathe into one lung more than the other. We usually do it, don't know it, so good to know. And then let that go. Let it relax. Okay, so we're going to switch and do our last movement on the right side, which is our somatic, I like just to call it a somatic twist. It has a little twist, right? So your right leg is going to come into extension. You're going to take it behind you. And then I like to just kind of slide my hand. I don't even need to lift it. It's not so much lift overhead. It's more of a diagonal. Reach the hand in one direction and the foot in the other. But it's not just hand and foot. I want to feel my appendages, my arm and leg are growing out of my waist. And they literally do, by the way. Your arms grow out of your rib cage. And they're growing out, and that's my extension. Because the waist is extending, the torso, my arm and leg go. And then on the exhalation, Instead of throwing this arm back, just let the hand rest on your belly. Roll the shoulder blade towards the ground behind you. Let your head roll. Make sure you got that pillow or whatever underneath the back of the head. And you can bring your leg forward if you'd like. So think hip is going to the right side of your mat, or excuse me, left side of your mat, and shoulders going to the left. And then opposite on the inhalation, shoulder to the one side, hip to the other. So opposite directions with the two girdles. Shoulder girdle and pelvic girdle. This truly is one of my favorites to take you into your torso, particularly right into your waist. And to develop this freedom of allowing the lower body, which we consider our animal being, our survival and instinctual persona, humanness, with the upper body. And the upper body is our wisdom, our intellect, our heart, and our spirit. So the thinker meets the feeler is another way to look at it. Take them at whatever pace feels good to you. If you want to take a final hold in the extension and a slow release, you can do that. Or a final hold in the rotation. And let that go. One last time for that beautiful right side. Hopefully you're not watching me, you're feeling you going into your felt sense. Whenever you feel like your right side is as lucky as your left side, take a moment to roll back onto your back into more of a neutral position where there's some symmetry in your legs, your arms. Put my bolsters underneath there just to finish up. I'll encourage you to place your hands somewhere on your torso, maybe a hand on the belly, a hand on the heart. Torso is so amazing. You can feel your backside, all the bones in the backside that literally, they got your back, right? They're protecting all of your organs from the backside. And you can let that side just settle in. The whole back side of the torso. Feel the support of the ground. Feel the weight of the bones, each breath out. Finding the earth. But then notice the softness, the spaciousness of the front of your torso. If we're completely honest, there's a vulnerability in the front side. Within that softness, you can even feel the beating of your own heart. Feel the movement of your lungs. Lungs have this beautiful pleura around them that allows them to just slide. The juiciness, all of the juiciness in this center body of yours. Your spleen on your left, your stomach, you can think of your intestines, any of the viscera of your body. Take a moment to say thank you for everything that's held in your beautiful torso. If there's anything in particular that needs a little more attention today, either organs, bones, muscles, picture that area in the mind's eye. As you breathe in, just notice it. And as you breathe out, send an invitation for that area to relax and release. It's an organ for that area to be healthy. We breathe in and we notice, and we breathe out. And we just send the invitation for relaxation anywhere in our torso. And just as we feel the rise and fall, the ebb and flow of the breath, even in this stillness of body, all of the liquids inside are moving. Feel your blood pumping. The juiciness inside of you is alive. Let that bring a smile to your face. Your aliveness. Please feel free to stay here as long as you'd like. Or we can take a full body yawn when you're ready to get up. Take a big inhalation, reach through your arms and your legs, both sides of the body, long and luscious, connected to your legs, your feet, and your pelvis. And exhale, sigh it out the mouth, let it go. If that feels good, do it another time, maybe even 2 more times. Maybe we can all make each other yawn through the energetic airwaves. So take your time coming back. I will be here for comments and questions. I'm going to begin to read some of your comments that I haven't yet. But in the interest of time for the recap of the video, I will take my hands to my heart. And like I said, I wish you were all here with me. And in some ways, I know you are. And thank you so much for doing so, because it means the world to me. Peace, joy, love and light.